All right. I think we're live now. Hello, my name's Mike Cornwell, and this is another edition of Leadership Corner. Every Friday, or every Friday that I can get to it, I host a live leadership training, and in this case, we go over either one or two concepts. And these leadership trainings are designed to help you increase the confidence in your own leadership, um, so that you can get out there and lead the people that you need to lead. And today we're going to go over a pretty straightforward concept. It won't be, breaking anyone's heads on what it is, but we'll also include kind of something that you might not expect. And so the topic for today is we're going to go over what is leadership, and prove it. To me, that's the more important part, proving it. Okay, leadership is not hard to understand. I'll draw a little picture here. Um, it will not shock or surprise anybody what the real definition of leadership is. I'll go over some things that it's not, but then I'm going to spend the time on the proof. And when you see the proof, you'll understand what I figured out, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And when I was writing my book, Influence of Leadership, there was many ahas. And one of those was all of a sudden I had come to the realization that this topic of leadership, which I had been trained while I was in the Marine Corps, and people throw out all the time, oh, the president's a leader, and this and that. Um, I had come to the realization that this is actually a real phenomena. And then I gained this extreme drive to get it out there because I can already tell that most people, they take for granted, like, oh, yeah. But it's actually a very profound thing, and I'll show you with the proof. So let's get started, okay? So I got my notes on here on the side. Just kind of ignore that. It's because I've got it known, I'm not very good at organizing. Anyways, so there's all sorts of people out there that when they start talking about leadership, they love to be very virtuous about this, and they immediately go, oh, it's about the others. It's not. It starts with one person, okay? And I'll prove it to you too. I'm not interested in the many people, what people call the followers, or the people who help out. That to me is not interesting. And it shouldn't be. It can be interesting, but I'm definitely not going to be swept up in this virtue signaling crap that people talk about the others. And the proof will show you. We got one person. It always starts with one person. We typically call this the leader. What happens is they take actions, right? And what they're trying to do is there's these people out there, may have taught this before, but there's these people out there that what he, she, whatever, they're trying to do something, and they need to work through these people to actually make it happen. So there's this thing here. At the end, I'm going to draw these little superstars and all this interestingness. All leadership is this person trying to do actions. They have to do actions to get these people to take actions towards some sort of goal, right? So something really basic. Something needs to get done that this person sees. They can see that something needs to get done. They're going to get these people to get out there and go do it. So I'm going to use the most absurd example of this, and I'm going to kind of stick with it. And if you get, I don't know, triggered and virtue signaled and all this other kind of stuff, that's your problem. Okay, so I'm going to go over the pyramids, right? So there's these crazy Egyptian pyramids out there. To me, this is an absurd example, but it's still a good one. There's a part to leadership and why it's leadership versus, take out the trash or some sort of other thing. There's a reason why it's leadership and it's not other things. And one of the key parts about leadership, it's about this thing here at the end. Okay? This thing at the end. How well can you see this? Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. Okay. It's about this thing at the end here. This person right here, they want that. And there's no way that they could build that on their own. They just can't. They just can't build that on their own. And so the person knows that with the the intelligent and orchestrated and sustained efforts of many people, few or many people, that this thing can actually come into existence. Now, when you start getting into leadership in the real world and practicing this, you'll run into all sorts of stuff, right? When people talk about leadership, this is where they spend all of their time. And for sure, there's plenty of reasons for that. This right here, the actions that you got to do to influence these people and all this. You really have to pay attention to many things like this. Where are you going? Do these people know where they're going? Do they know what they're doing? It's my favorite question now. Anytime we talk about a leader, and I went on a radio station in Alabama one time, and they wanted to know about my experiences in Afghanistan. And one of the things I left them with was like, okay, leadership's super important, so I'd have to say to the top, where are we going? If you can't answer where you're going, that ain't leadership. That's something else. We'll talk about that later. But anyways, so people will focus on these actions here, but there's all these different components. And I guess as I think about it now, I hadn't really kind of put this together, in this visual format, but there's, this person, there's this, a person, 2, the actions that they take, 3, the other people, 4, the actions that they take, and number 5 is the last thing. I was calling it a goal. It's also called a vision. We're getting ready to have some experience, the nice fun live, the nice funness of live training. I'm getting ready to have a whole group of people kind of burst into the house, make all sorts of noise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to lock them out of the house so they can go around somewhere else. All right. So anyways, these are really all the components to leadership. Now, John Maxwell is an author whom I really much like, and he says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. That's not true. This is influence. It's number 2. There's also number 1, which is a leader. Number 2, what they call influence. Number 3, there's people. Number 4, it's the actions that they do, which you might call influence as well. Number 5, you have a goal. That's leadership. And there's a little bit more characteristics to it, but I'm not going to get into that right this second. Okay, I want to get into the proof. The proof to me that's where the real value lies. And after I share with this proof, if this doesn't really awaken the animal spirits and the epiphanies about what's actually happening around and all this kind of stuff, then it might take you a little bit, and that's okay. But this proof is pretty profound. So the first question I have to ask is, right, so what I'm trying to prove here is leadership a real thing? Is it leadership, or is it something else? There's other words out there that you need to be very understanding of what they mean. One is manipulation. Okay, so that's another one. Like in the space and the realm of which leadership lies in, these giant circles of, mathematicians call them sets, right? So this is a typical Venn diagram. You'd have leadership, right? Then you'd have manipulation. You might have influence here. I'm not really planning this out, but I'm seeing that this is the case, right? So you can see right here, there's this middle spot right here where influence, manipulation, and leadership all exist. But you can see very clearly, leadership is not influence. There are things, and the primary thing that I was mentioning earlier of why influence is not leadership is because this box exists. And I'd also say this box, although I don't know what that box is, to be perfectly honest. That might just be, they're just overlappings. This is a little theoretical, but because this box definitely exists, leadership can't be influence. That's a basic mathematical proof right here shown to you that I don't think anybody's ever even come up with. This is basic stuff. The fact that you'd have to say is, I know I'm getting a little off tangent here about explaining and proving leadership. This is kind of maybe a higher level proof. These words are always related to leadership, and you should have a clarity of understanding of what they are, because it'll keep you out of this realm of manipulation and then just influence for the sake of influence, which I've seen both this, and I've seen this. You could clearly see that, unless you want to redefine these words, which totally irrelevant, makes irrelevant the words, manipulation can't be leadership because it's just different. Same thing with influence. There are things inside of influence that relate to influence that don't have anything to do with leadership. Now, these Venn diagrams aren't perfect. It might be the case that, some aspects of, influence might be, I'm not going to go into it. Sorry, I have a hard time sometimes with tangents and organizing these things. But this is what I'm going to kind of show you, that this exists, and it's not quite this, which is manipulation. Okay. So the first question I have, we're just going to get really simple and really basic here. Is it true or is it false that there are things to be built or to create that one person cannot do within some reasonable time or lifetime? Right? So this is the number one question. Are there things too big for a person? Of course there are. That's why I gave the example of the pyramids, right? I don't know why I put it with these little lines here. There's different layers or whatever. Look how big these people are, right? That's a gigantic person by comparison to these pyramids. But, the narrative about the creation of the pyramids, one person did not build those pyramids. This is just like simple math. I'm gonna, simple logic. We'll get there. Let me just kind of piece it together. But you got to be really clear here. Are the things too big for a single person? Yes. Yeah, of course there are. Yep. Yes. Check mark. Okay. Number 2. Do other people help other people do tasks? Again, this is super simple proof. But do other people have you ever observed, or have you personally helped somebody else do something? Of course. Do people help? Yeah. Yes, they do. Check mark. So we've already established this thing's too big for one person to do, and we've already established that the other people will help people do things, right? We're going to separate these for now. They're all going to combine together, but for now, we're just looking at these in isolation. Okay? Why? Why do people help people? This is an interesting one. Why? Now, this goes back to that Venn diagram. And the reason why, let me see if I could, right here live, let me see if I can make this Venn diagram correct. You know what? I think it's this. This might not be perfect, and there's probably other words involved here. Okay. So what I have here is basically have leadership is this circle on the right, manipulation is this circle on the left, and influence is this thing that sits in between. So the similarity between manipulation and leadership is actually influence. So rather than having it like some separate thing outside of them, which I don't think it is. I think that's what influence actually is. So the commonality between manipulation and leadership is actually influence. Now, in this case, influence is entirely contained both within leadership and both within manipulation. So the why do people help is actually this, right here, influence. Another term that people use, and as far as I can tell, there is no difference between this word. I'm sure somebody could, come up with the tiny little definition of why they're different, is persuasion. It's kind of funny. I've started getting pretty in-depth looking into, sales and marketing and things like that. And one of the things that I've come to find in similarities is you can call that sales right there. People will have a lot of different perspectives of sales, so it goes certainly bigger than that. But the people whom I'm listening to, the people who I pay attention to, they call it persuasion. And then the way that they describe persuasion, I'm like, well, that's influence. There's no difference. But you can see, again, this is not going to get into like mathematical set theory. This should be pretty obvious. Influence is only, you know what? Let me use a different color. That's why I got these colors. Let's use a blue. Influence does not contain leadership. Leadership contains influence. Therefore, to do the mathematical proof, John Maxwell, leadership does not equal influence. Okay. So the question is why? And the answer is persuasion, because people they are persuaded, they are influenced. I don't think there is a difference between these. Nothing truly meaningful. Okay. So they do that. Now here's the icing on the cake, right? Because we're getting pretty close. I might need to add a little bit more than the notes I've got here to send it home, the difference between manipulation and leadership. But last question, at least I wrote up here, which is why I focused on the leader and I don't focus on the followers nearly so much. Here's the question you need to ask yourself. Okay, we're just going to put this leader right here. We're going to redraw our same thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've tackled number 5 here, the pyramid. That's number 1. Too big, yes. Do people help? Yes. I guess that's number 3, and that's number 4. Why? That's number 2. I didn't really plan this, but this to me makes sense. Number 3, number 4. This is number 5. Okay, so the last one here. And this is the question. This is the question that really kind of I don't think I asked it this way, but now I understand it this way. So right now we got 2, 3, 4, and 5, but we don't have 1 on there. So the question is, without number 1, do you get 2, 3, 4, and 5? Without the person who believes, I'm going to draw another kind of fun color. A little bit of yellow, a little hard to see. This is supposed to represent clouds, supposed to represent something that doesn't quite exist. This is the leader imagining this thing existing. Without this person imagining that this thing is possible, would 2, 3, 4, and 5 happen? The answer is no. No. Can you remove the I'm calling them the origin person? No. Okay. So let's kind of go back over this proof like super quick here. Yeah, because I kind of like it. It's actually in reverse order. I also didn't plan that. Are the things that are too big out there? Yeah, of course there are. Are people going to help with these things? Do people help other, like a person out to like go do things? Of course they do. People like to call it community. If you have a church or something like that, they'll go and they'll go do things. So they go, why? I didn't spend a lot of time on this. There's plenty of other videos that we'll put out that will go over this because this is that number 2 that everybody likes to focus on. But why do people do it? And they're persuaded or they're influenced. And just kind of like real quick, what that means is they believe that they stand to benefit from doing the actions, and so they'll go and do it. And so the way to just the super general understanding of what it takes to persuade someone or influence someone is to know what these people, what they want, and where they're wanting to go, and then, or at least finding the various people who want the thing, or they believe that they will be better off by doing it, and then they will help. It unlocks them. That's what persuasion and influence means. Number 4, can you remove this origin person? Can you remove the number 1 person here? The answer is no. So it proves this entire chain exists. Now here's where it gets interesting. This is just like the basic technicals. You could attempt to attack this proof in many different ways. And it shows the pyramids, because now I'm going to do a little flip thing. I feel like I've got to do it. So now we're going to talk about manipulation. Here's the thing about manipulation. The difference between manipulation and leadership is I don't know if I could sum this up as quickly as I would like to, but the difference between them is that leadership is for leadership has 2 things in common that manipulation doesn't. Number 1, it has bigger than. I'm gonna ignore that for now and just point out one of them because it's most relevant. And does it intentionally and openly stand to benefit the other people? This thing that's at the end here, which is I mentioned that the pyramids is a super ridiculous example, but the people who are building the pyramids, they didn't really stand to benefit from the pyramids. It's not obvious. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It does not seem like that is too obvious. And if you go into the story of the nature of them building it, well, they were enslaved against their will to go and do it. I think the only nature by which that they would stand to benefit is maybe they do not get force applied to them as much. Very hard to call that leadership. Manipulation, the people don't stand to benefit. Now, all of these are still the case in manipulation and leadership. But the only thing that's different between the two is that the people don't actually stand to benefit. So they have to believe people who will manipulate, same looking kind of formula here. These people, they could believe that they will benefit, and so they will go and do it. So they'll be persuaded in their influence rather than coerced and forced. But at some point in time, that never materializes for them. They never get this thing. This leader here, part of what number 2 has to do is they have to convey this same belief onto them so that these people believe the same thing, so they'll go and they'll implement it. That's the magic of number 2. But the reality is some people they are not intent on helping the number 3. They're intent on doing their own thing. That's where somebody might be withholding information and so on and so on. That's not leadership. That's not even close to leadership. And if any person out there thinks that intentionally withholding information such as they're getting other people to do things and it's not beneficial for them, that is not leaders. It's manipulators. Really that simple. So this is it. This is the proof of leadership. The proof of leadership is really simple. There's big things that are out there that are possible to create. People do envision that these things are possible. They then have to come up with ways, and this is an organic process, which there's plenty of strategies and tactics to make it, but this is very organic. That a person has to come up with ways to get these people to go and do this thing, especially when it doesn't exist, and then you're going to run in a situation where all of a sudden people, what it actually takes to get people to do these things, and they don't, that's the magic leadership. Putting that to the side, a person has to go and envision these things. They then have to take those actions. Then the people themselves They then have to take the actions, and from that, there is a chance that they could achieve the goal. They may not achieve the goal, and even if they don't achieve the goal, that doesn't mean it's now manipulation. It just may mean that they just weren't successful. And that does happen, not to get into the, you know, is what it is. I mean, at some point in time, they might realize, you know what, that's not the direction we really need to go in. It's really this thing over here. Because, I mean, you got to think about this. This is imaginary. This pyramid here does not exist. It just doesn't exist. This is imaginary. So just because you can imagine it, doesn't mean that it's actually going to be put into an existence. And you could beat yourself on a stone to create these things. But that's for another time. So that's leadership. One person taking actions to get other people to take actions on something greater than themselves. My name is Mike Cornwell, and this is our Leadership Corner. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from this that will, clarify and solidify the nature of how you do leadership. I wrote a leadership book. It's called Influence and Leadership. It's available on Amazon. I think I'm supposed to, get super smart at using social media and put links down below and all that kind of stuff. I don't have that right this moment. But if you're interested in reading this book on leadership, which was not written actually to influence anyone, but just to actually describe in as clear language as possible and is organized exactly this topic of leadership from the beginning to the end. You can get that on Amazon. Also, here soon, I'm getting ready to launch some leadership products that are, I'm not going to speak about them soon, or speak about them right here in this moment, but we're going to start doing training. We're going to start having, awesome, helpful documents. I'm super excited about creating these carry cards so you can walk around and actually see a few things about certain kinds of people that will help you influence them. I've never seen anything like this before. It's just been part of the process of getting an understanding of how to help you become great leaders. And so that's coming soon, so stay tuned for that. If you have any questions or comments, put them down below in the comment sections. Would love to hear, what your thoughts are on this. How could I do this better? You can tell me to stop rambling or to increase the rants. I'm fine doing that too. If you got something out of this, definitely let us know. If you have any questions, we would love to do videos based on your questions. Other than that, have a great Friday, and I'll see you soon.